Hello and welcome to the latest video on my top 1000 countdown. This video we're going numbers 100 to 91. Into the top 100 we go. So fighter number 100 is actually Lennox Lewis. Okay, Lennox Lewis beat 14 world champions. He fought 115 rounds against champions, and he beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 38 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Lennox Lewis had 24 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 32 knockouts, 15 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 5 knockouts in the first round. Now Lewis was top 10 rated for a total of 13 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to 25 fights. Now Lewis was pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings for 5 years. He had 4 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 3 wins. He scored 3 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 2 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Lennox Lewis's opposition fought rate comes in at 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 2 from 13. Now he had 17 fights against champions, including 14 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, with 9 knockouts. He had 4 fights against Hall of Famers and went unbeaten, going 3 wins, no loss, 1 draw, with 2 knockouts. And Lewis had 18 world title fights, including 15 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, and 14 title defences. So Lennox kicks us off onto officially double figures, okay, to a fantastic fighter, okay, the great puncher Alexis Arguello. Now Alexis Arguello beat 14 individual world champions. He fought 164 rounds against champions, and Arguello beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting 58 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now Arguello had 28 fights against rated opponents. He scored 62 knockouts, 36 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 14 in the first round. Now Arguello was top 10 rated for 9 years in total, nearly a decade, and his longest unbeaten run was 25 fights. Like Lewis, he was pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings for 5 years, and he had a total of 7 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 4 wins. He scored 1 win against a pound for pound top 3 fighter, and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Alexis Arguello's opposition fought rate comes in at 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 3 from 13. So Arguello had 18 fights against champions, including 15 wins, 3 losses, no draws, with 13 knockouts. He had 5 fights against Hall of Famers, including 3 wins, 2 losses, no draws, with 3 knockouts. And Arguello had a large title fight record of 22 world title fights. He scored 19 wins, with 3 losses, no draws, and 16 title defences. So that is Alexis Arguello in 99. When we go to 98, okay, he's one of the great flyweight fighters and former Olympic gold medalist Frankie Gennaro. Now Gennaro was a great little flyweight fighter, okay. He beat 9 world champions. He fought 258 rounds against champions, Gennaro, and he beat 4 individual Hall of Famers, fighting a total of 110 rounds against Hall of Fame fighters in his career. Now against rated fighters, Gennaro came in with a total of 49 fights. He scored 19 knockouts, 7 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 0 knockouts in the first round. And Frankie Gennaro was top 10 rated for a total of 7 years. He had a longest unbeaten run of 26 fights, and he was never pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings, but did come close on a few occasions. Now Frankie Gennaro had 9 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 5 wins. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Frankie Gennaro's opposition fought rate comes in at 6 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 4 from 13. So Gennaro had 27 fights against champions, including 15 wins, 9 losses, 3 draws, with 0 knockouts. He had 10 fights against Hall of Famers, including 6 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, with 0 knockouts. And Frankie Gennaro had 16 world title fights. That included 10 wins, 3 losses, 3 draws, and Gennaro made 11 title defences. So, on to our next fighter, another great fighter, okay, Lou Bruillard. Now, Lou Bruillard, okay, beat 6 world champions. He fought 176 rounds against champions, and he beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters individually, and fought nearly 100 rounds against Hall of Famers with a total of 99. Now, against rated fighters, Bruillard had 44 fights against rated fighters. He scored 57 knockouts in his career, 20 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 2 knockouts in the first round. Now, Brewillard was top 10 rated for a total of 7 years. He had a longest unbeaten run of 20 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 2 years. Now, Brewillard had 21 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 8 wins. He scored 3 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters, and 1 win against a pound for pound number 1 fighter. And Lou Brewillard's opposition fought rate comes in at 6 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 4 from 13. So, Brewillard had 18 fights against champions, including 8 wins, 10 losses, no draws, with 1 knockout. He had 11 fights against Hall of Famers, including 3 wins, 8 losses, no draws, with 0 knockouts. And Brewillard had 4 world title fights, including 2 wins, 2 losses, no draws, and 0 title defences. So there's Lou Brewillard in 97. When we go to fight in 96, okay, his puncher heavyweight, Big George Foreman. Now, George Foreman beat 4 world champions, okay, he fought 70 rounds against champions, and he beat 4 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting a total of 69 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now, George Foreman had a total of 20 fights against rated fighters. He scored 68 knockouts in his career, 46 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 15 knockouts in the first round. Now, Foreman was top 10 rated across his 2 parts of his career for a total 13 years. He had the longest unbeaten run, okay, ended by Muhammad Ali, of 40 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 1 year in my all-time rankings. Now, Foreman had 6 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 4 wins. He scored 1 win against a pound for pound top 3 fighter, and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And George Foreman's opposition fought rate comes in at 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 3 from 13. So Foreman had 9 fights against champions, including 5 wins, 4 losses, no draws, with 5 knockouts. He had 7 fights against Hall of Famers, including 5 wins, 2 losses, no draws, with 5 knockouts. And Foreman had 8 world title fights, including 5 wins, 3 losses, no draws, and 3 title defences. So there's George Foreman in 96. When we go to fight in 95, okay, it's to one of my top 10 bantamweights of all time, okay, the tough and capable Joe Lynch. Now, Joe Lynch, okay, beat 7 individual champions. He fought 225 rounds against champions, and Lynch beat 4 Hall of Fame fighters individually, fighting 205 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now, due to the period from pre-rating to rating era, he has a reduced total of 11 fights against rated fighters, a number that would be way higher than that. He scored 40 knockouts, okay, 17 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 2 knockouts in the first round. Now, Joe Lynch was top 10 rated for 0 years. He had the longest unbeaten run that came to 22 fights, and Joe Lynch was pound for pound rated for 0 years. Now, he had 7 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 3 wins. Lynch scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters, and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Joe Lynch's opposition fought rate comes in at 7 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 4 from 13. So Lynch had 22 fights against champions, including 11 wins, 9 losses, 2 draws, with 4 knockouts, and he really did have a tough career. If you know the fighters from that time and look at Joe Lynch's resume, not only was it large, it was packed with good names. He had 19 fights against Hall of Fame fighters, including 7 wins, 8 losses, 4 draws, with 1 knockout, and Joe Lynch had 6 title fights, including 3 wins, 3 losses, no draws, with 1 title defense. So that is Joe Lynch in 95. When we go to fight in 94, okay, he's the fighter who I still believe holds the record for most knockouts professionally by a Filipino fighter. It is the hard-punching Seferino Garcia. Now, Seferino Garcia beat 1 world champion. He fought 124 rounds against champions, and Garcia beat 2 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 129 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Seferino Garcia Garcia scored 76 knockouts, 35 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 13 knockouts in the first round. And Garcia was top 10 rated for a total of 8 years. He had a longest unbeaten run of 14 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 2 years. Now, Garcia had 20 fights against pound for pounders, scored in 6 wins. He scored 2 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Seferino Garcia's opposition fought rate comes in at 7 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 5 from 13. So Garcia had 13 fights against champions, including 1 win, 10 loss, 2 draws, with 1 knockout. He had 14 fights against Hall of Famers, including 3 wins, 9 losses, 2 draws, with 2 knockouts. And Garcia had 6 world title fights, including 2 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, and 1 title defence. Right, so onwards we go to fight number 93. And it is middleweight Stanley Ketchel, who was lost at young age 23, like Salvador Sanchez and others. Okay, a number of fighters pass young, and it's like with Salvador Sanchez. I once did a video on my old channel, what could have been, and what I did is mapped out the fighters in the 80s who came around from feather to lightweight, because I've no doubts at some point Sanchez would have moved up at least to super feather, and I did a video showing the caliber and all the top level fighters coming out across those 3 divisions. Ketchel's another thing, when he passed, we had Jimmy Clabby come in, we had Jeff Smith come in, we had Hadi Greb come in, George Chip, all these other names, Les Darcy. I mean, Ketchel's career with another 6 or 7 years on it would have probably been incredible. So Ketchel beat 3 world champions, he fought 91 rounds against champions, and he beat 2 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 90 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now, Ketchel, full pre-rating era fighter, so he has no fights against rated fighters, but he scored 48 knockouts, 18 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 8 knockouts in the first round. Ketchel was top 10 rated for 0 years. He had a longest unbeaten run of 37 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 2 years. Now, Ketchel had 11 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 7 wins. He scored 2 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Stanley Ketchel's opposition fought rate comes in at 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 2 from 13. And just imagine Ketchel fighting as a welterweight. I read, which fighter was it who said it? A fighter said actually that Ketchel at welterweight was a way more devastating fighter than he was at middleweight. Now, Ketchel obviously fought at welter, middle, he fought at heavy, of course. He covered he didn't fully fight heavy like Sam Langford did or other fighters I've done. Even Rosenblum's, Loughran's, Mickey Walker's, he didn't have, but he still fought fighters across divisions from welterweight to heavyweight, and what he could have gone on to do is incredible. But yeah, someone said that. They said actually, from what you know about Ketchel as a middleweight, he was an even better welterweight, more devastating puncher. So heavens only knows what he could have done if he'd have stayed at welterweight. But anyway, Ketchel had 10 fights against champions, including 6 wins, 4 losses, no draws, with 3 knockouts. He had 9 fights against Hall of Famers, Ketchel, with 5 wins, 4 losses, no draw, and 2 knockouts. And Stanley Ketchel had 8 world title fights, including 6 wins, 2 losses, no draws, and 4 title defences. So on to number 92 we go. Okay, it's to another of my top 10 great bantamweights. There's been 2 in this video. Joe Lynch and now Kid Williams. So Kid Williams beat 4 world champions. He fought 115 rounds against champions, and Williams beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 177 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now in a reduced number against rated fighters, Kid Williams comes in with a total of 10 fights. He scored 49 knockouts, 16 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, 5 knockouts in the first round. And Kid Williams was top 10 rated for 0 years. He had a longest unbeaten run that came to 46 fights, and Kid Williams was pound for pound rated for 0 years. Now he had 7 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 2 wins. He scored 1 win against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Kid Williams' opposition fought rate comes in at 8 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 6 from 13. So Kid Williams had 14 fights against champions, including 5 wins, 7 losses, 2 draws with 1 knockout. He had 17 fights against Hall of Famers, including 6 wins, 9 losses, 2 draws with 2 knockouts. And Kid Williams had 4 world title fights. That was broken into 1 win, 1 loss, 2 draws with 2 title defences. So there is Kid Williams in 92. The final fighter on this video, the first in the top 100, is Jake LaMotta, the Raging Bull. Now, Jake LaMotta gets a lot of criticism saying he's easy to hit. He wasn't as easy to hit as people said. Yeah, he could be caught, but any fighter can be caught. I remember some Pratt, who wrote for a magazine, saying that Nicolino Locce wasn't a great defensive fighter because he took facial damage. So what I did is a 30-minute video showing pictures off book covers, photos of Willie Pep's face all bashed up, because the guy had said Willie Pep was a defensive fighter, but Locce wasn't. So based on facial damage, neither was Pep then. Even defensive fighters get hit. You know, Floyd Mayweather was a great defensive fighter. He got hit. You know, it's ridiculous to say you're only a great defensive fighter if you never take a punch. So anyway, but Jake LaMotta doesn't also get credit, I find, for fighting black murderers row fighters. Yes, not only did he fight the great fighters he fought black murderers row fighters as well. He should be credited for that, when many didn't want to. So Jake LaMotta beat 4 world champions. He fought 130 rounds against champions, and he beat 4 Hall of Fame fighters individually. LaMotta fighting 140 rounds against Hall of Famers. Now, Jake LaMotta had 55 fights against rated opponents. He scored 30 knockouts, 7 in 3 rounds or less, and 3 in the first round. And the Raging Bull was top 10 rated as a fighter for 9 years. He had a longest unbeaten run that was 14 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 5 years in my all-time rankings. Now, Jake LaMotta had 18 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 10 wins. He scored 6 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 6 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Jake LaMotta's opposition fought rate comes in at 5 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 4 from 13. So Jake LaMotta had 12 fights against champions, including 6 wins, 6 losses, no draws with 1 knockout. He had 13 fights against Hall of Famers, including 6 wins, 7 losses, no draws with 1 knockout. And Jake LaMotta had 4 title fights, including 3 wins, 1 loss, no draw, and 2 title defences. So Jake LaMotta there in 91 ends the first video in my top 100. I will do another video in about an hour's time to add another 10 in to make it the 4th for the day, the next one. But yeah, there's my latest video. I'm Boxing Librarian. I'm out for now.